Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Indian Council of World Affairs, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to Sapru House for the discussion on the book Indian Parliament Shaping Foreign Policy by Shri V.K. Prasad. The book provides an insightful look into the valuable contribution of India's parliament as a vital organ of our democracy in shaping Indian foreign policy. The discussion today will be chaired by Ambassador T.C.A. Raghavan, former Director General, Indian Council of World Affairs. Shri Harivansh Narayan Singh ji, Honorable Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, will deliver the special remarks. This would be followed by remarks by Shri Sujeet Kumar ji, Honorable Member of Parliament and Member Consultative Committee of the Ministry of External Affairs. Thereafter, we will have a brief question and answer session, moderated by the Chair. May I now request Ms. Nutan Kapoor Mahawar, Acting Director General, Indian Council of World Affairs, to kindly give her welcome remarks.
Honorable Deputy Chairman, Rajya Sabha, Shri Harivansh Narayan Singh ji, Honorable Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, Shri Sujeet Kumar ji, Ambassador T.C.A. Raghavan, former Director General ICWA, who is chairing today's discussion, members of the Diplomatic Corps, students and friends. As you are all aware, the executive legislature interface is an essential element contributing to the shaping of foreign policy in the Indian polity and is a hallmark of democracy. Through mechanisms such as the hearings of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs, on issues such as demands for grants or topical issues related to foreign policy, and modalities such as short duration debates, calling attention notices, parliamentary questions, ministerial statements, we see democracy in operation in the Parliament of India and the executive's responsibility to people's representatives and to the citizens of India. The Advisory Consultative Committee on External Affairs is yet another mechanism for this interface, and the Ministry of External Affairs routinely provides evidence to other parliamentary committees as well, as and when required. It was to capture the workings and impact of this interface that a decision to commission the book project titled Indian Parliament Shaping Indian Foreign Policy by Shri K.V. Prasad, senior journalist, was taken by ICWA. The book examines and catalogues 3 case studies of intense parliamentary debates having a significant impact on the course of Indian foreign policy, each set apart by approximately a decade and with reverberations till date. These are the case of India-Sri Lanka ties from the 1980s, the case of WTO negotiations of the 1990s, and the India-US nuclear deal of 2005 to 2008. On the case of Sri Lanka from the 1980s, the book establishes that the debates in the parliament on IPKF presence in Sri Lanka made the government reverse its decision and laid the foundation of India's carefully considered approaches towards its neighbors, mindful of mutual sensitivities and concerns. With the benefit of hindsight, one can say that these debates in the parliament brought home the point of the need for enhanced integrative linkages and interdependencies with our neighbors across sectors for regional stability, security, and prosperity, and for goodwill for India among their people. It affirmed that India's military forces are meant for the defense of national security interests and securing the well-being of the Indian people, and that the presence of our military forces on foreign soil and waters would be in service of these objectives, in addition to contributing to UN peacekeeping, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, and other humanitarian and environmental goals. It also provides the basis for India to adopt an approach that proactively pursues fair and equal status for people of Indian origin and their complete integration in the countries of their citizenship with its counterpart governments as part of foreign policy and diplomatic outreach. The second case of debates in the Parliament in the run-up to the establishment of WTO in the 1990s raised awareness among government circles and the industry in India, then a newly liberalized economy, on the need to invest in building negotiating skills and capacity so as to be able to take informed positions and defend interests in international fora. An offshoot of the enhanced focus in Parliament on WTO matters in the 1990s was the birth of what is now described as economic diplomacy. The debates in the Parliament also made the government seek changes through negotiations and coalition formation at the newly formed WTO, which were favorable to India and other developing countries, laying the basis for India to emerge as a voice of the global South on trade issues at the forum. The Parliament was assured at that time that despite the economic pangs of the early 90s, in the backdrop of tumultuous changes in the world, like the collapse of the Soviet Union, the First Gulf War, German unification, emergence of not-so-friendly US as the sole superpower, India would strive to contribute in shaping the world's trade rules and not be content by being a mere rule taker, especially in sensitive areas like agriculture that impacted the well-being of its people and its food security. The debate on WTO matters in the Parliament also brought home the point of the importance of the impact of trade policies on the national economy and their potential to contribute to the overall well-being of a people as well as for international cooperation. A thought that holds immense value in today's fractured world plagued by trade and tariff wars. Learning from history and the present, it is important that the rules of trade be rewritten so as to turn trade into a harbinger of peace and prosperity and not as a forerunner of wars, colonization, and empire building, not as a tool to accumulate capital as a currency of power, which is the tragedy of human development, and India needs to make its contribution towards this. The third case of the debate in the Parliament on the India-US nuclear deal made the government of the day explain its position and posture in negotiations which had implications for a sensitive area of national security, for the transformation of India's relationship with the US and consequently its allies and partners, thus expanding India's circle of friends. It had implications for laying the foundation for the end of nuclear and technological apartheid for India, for India's acceptance as a responsible country in the global nuclear order. The Parliament and the people of India were assured that this has been achieved while preserving India's principled and traditional position on the rejection of NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, based on enlightened self-interest and without diluting India's deep commitment to universal and verifiable disarmament. India believes that the NPT is a flawed basis of the global nuclear edifice, and this has been India's consistent position since NPT's inception. The Parliament appreciated that India's dialogue with the US, then the sole superpower, on the nuclear issue post-Pokhran II heralded the transformation of India from first an outlier of the global nuclear order, then a challenger to it, and now a nuclear power that is being increasingly accepted and mainstreamed into the global nuclear regime, a process that continues to be underway today as a legacy of the India-US nuclear deal. In the wake of the more than decade-long dialogue with the US post-Pokhran II and the assessment of successive governments to enhance the country's civil nuclear energy potential, for which international cooperation was considered to be vital. The Parliament, being acutely conscious of the need to protect its citizens from nuclear accidents and learning from the 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy, felt duty-bound to enact the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act. It should also be said that since the deal and in the backdrop of the current geopolitical turmoil and increased nuclear rhetoric, the existing global nuclear order has also begun to rumble and tumble, and the scenarios predicted are widely divergent. Towards flashpoints, if we were to listen to the doomsday sayers, or towards a nuclear renaissance, if we were to listen to the optimist. It is amidst this dichotomy and flux prevailing globally in the strategic and civil nuclear sector that discussions are now underway in India to amend the legislative framework of our nuclear sector, particularly its international cooperation dimension. The Parliament will once again be called upon to exercise judgment to preclude a nuclear Bhopal gas tragedy or a Chernobyl in India, tragedies of the 80s whose effects are felt till this date. The safety and lives of India's people is paramount and sacrosanct. Friends, the debates in the Parliament on WTO and on the India-US nuclear deal also raised important issues pertaining to limitations in Parliament's mandate and oversight flowing from the Constitution regarding prior consultation or ratification by legislature of international agreements. These debates also raised issues related to sovereignty while entering into international agreements. Both these aspects need greater study and analysis. These three cases of intense Parliament debates on foreign policy issues have been eloquently elaborated upon by the author in this book, shepherding which has been a privilege for ICWA. I would like to end by pointing out that ICWA as a foreign policy institution is itself backed by an act of parliament, that the executive-legislative interface is very much built into its governing structure, and that it benefits and draws advantage from this guidance. Thank you for your attention.
May I now call the author, Shri K.V. Prasad, senior journalist, to kindly make his presentation about the book. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Do you mind if I just remove the pedal slide?
Yes, you can. Just push it in.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's fine. At the outset, I wish to thank the Indian Council for World Affairs on two counts. One, for reposing faith in my project, which came soon after I ended my formal association with any news organization, and provided the opportunity to study the intersection of Parliament and its interventions in crafting the country's foreign policy. My special thanks to Acting Director General, Ms. Nutan Kapoor Mahawar, for organizing this discussion and for her gracious words of welcome. Thank you, ma'am. I am honored that the Honorable Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha, Harivansh Narayan Singh ji, and Mr. Sujeet, Kumar, Member of Parliament, consented to share their thoughts on the book, and Ambassador T.C.A. Raghavan agreed to chair the event. Among the audience are some of my fellow travelers from the world of journalism, and of course, people whom we interacted as journalists. Thank you very much. Much before the constitution of the first parliament in 1952, members of the Constituent Assembly Legislative, that is between 1947 and 1949, and the Provisional Parliament, its successor till 1952 May, were active participants in matters relating to external affairs. With Prime Minister Nehru steering the policy, members were candid in conducting critical analysis and at times disagreeing with the pursuit. In fact, I've found evidence in the records that the parliamentary committee, a standing committee on parliamentary and commonwealth was formed in 1947, but I could not trace a shred of paper in Parliament Library, even though some old timers did mention there are some records. And only in 1968 Journal of Indian Parliament, I found reference that these were informal conversations with no record. So I'm not too sure if still there's a shade of gray in between. But my research showed that there was a committee, it's recorded, but it's not found in the parliamentary record keeping. Anyway, so early seeds of my interest in debates of Constituent Assembly on policy issues was sown in 1997, when as a correspondent in the Tribune, my editor, late Harivansh Singh, put me on the job to dig into debates on various subjects. For the special supplements the Tribune was bringing to mark the 50th year of independence. So every week there was a supplement and I was to go into debates to get some subjects for them. However, my professional commitment as a reporter and correspondent for the Tribune and the Hindu kept me away from setting aside time to pursue any serious study requiring a disciplined approach. The change of circumstances toward the end of 2020 and a conversation with then DG Ambassador Raghavan and Director of Research Nivedita Reji, and approval of the proposal by the Council was an opportunity and ultimately resulted in my debut book. I begin with a disclaimer. This book is not an academic exercise. Having spent 30 years covering Parliament, both houses, I feel it is a place where politicians and political parties negotiate policy through parliamentary process. In place, right? So the crucial interplay can be highly absorbing, especially as one covering Parliament, to understand the finer aspects of negotiations on key issues between those holding diametrically opposing views. Parliament in foreign policy is too wide a canvas and diverse. To do justice to the breadth and depth of discussions, I chose the three debates, as you just mentioned, in separate decades. The deployment of IPKF, the Indian Peacekeeping Force, which became quite a contentious issue, as all of you would remember, India joining the WTO, and of course the Indo-US Civil Nuclear Agreement. Now the last agreement, I had the advantage of traveling to the United States and working as a fellow with the US Congress. I got a Fulbright fellowship, and at the same time the US Congress was debating, and I was working in the office of Congressman Jim McDermott, who was the founder of India Caucus, and he was a strong NPT believer. He voted against India Bill. So one could understand the dynamics at play all the time over there. So it was a time when Congress was debating the issue. So these events spanned several governments, majority governments, minority governments, coalition governments. So you could see the breadth of Indian politics at play all the time. And the focus from my side was to examine whether parliamentary interventions forced the government to tweak the policy or it continued otherwise. The factors varied. In case of the IPKF, following the change of guard at home with the National Front government of Vishwanath Pratap Singh, Prime Minister, bringing back the troops committed by Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. Since then, this is my conclusion, that India has not put military boots on the ground, except participation in the UN peacekeeping forces or the human disaster relief works that we are asked to. The WTO debate began when VP Singh was the Commerce Minister under Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. And of course, India joined the new trade order under Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao in 1995, much against, there was a debate, if you remember, most of us were there. There was debate inside the House and very equally debates outside the House with activist groups leading morchas and holding separate events, which I as a reporter used to cover both inside and outside. So it gives you a different perspective. And of course, that was the first time I remember states started questioning the right of Parliament and right of the government of India to sign agreements which would have a bearing on states, especially on agriculture. Some of which came back during the debate on Indo-US nuclear deal. So, and of course, as we know, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh staked his government in pursuing the policy towards Indo-US nuclear deal policy. This situation changed a couple of years. So all these three debates show that the government of the day did what it think it's required to do. But this situation changed a couple of years later when the opposition forced the hand to write in laws, compensation claims in the Civil Nuclear Liabilities Damages Act, which now the government is planning to revisit after 14 years. And part of it was not just Chernobyl, because the debates also had the impact of the Fukushima 2011 nuclear reactor. Because in Parliament, members of Parliament were concerned that in 84 there was inadequate compensation of the Bhopal gas tragedy. And if you remember the famous case of ambulance chasers, they will refer to that because lawyers from other countries were trying to help you out. And this whole compensation thing got warped up. And then, while the laws were being still debated and written, the bill, Fukushima happened. So it suddenly changed the whole perspective of the way Parliament started looking at it. Anyway, we are now going to have a debate on it again very soon, if not in monsoon session, maybe by the winter session. So the conclusion, as I said, the governments of the day decide the course they thought was in the best interest of the country, underscoring their doubt that the opposition can have its say, the government will have its way. So recently, post-Operation Sindoor, the government sent multi-party delegations to over 30 countries to articulate India's stand. Historically, as early as 1947, members of the Constituent Assembly Legislative sought to know from Prime Minister Nehru how could they join delegations India was sending overseas. And this was in the November 1947. And by then, almost 70 delegations had visited to various countries. So members of Parliament wanted to know from Prime Minister whether they could join. Well, I will not state how Prime Minister Nehru responded. Why? In the hope that at least this might kindle your curiosity to read the book among the many other recorded instances. Is there a case for greater involvement of members of Parliament on foreign policy issues? It appears the debate around it has started again. Why do I say so? There are two aspects. I recall an instance when a former foreign secretary in one of the lecture series in Parliament organized in around 2007 or so around that time, he said he agreed with the members electorate that the MEA should have greater engagement with members of Parliament. This was his assessment. I think this could be answered by Mr. Sujeet Kumar, who is attached to the Consultative Committee of MEA, who obviously has greater insight on the consultation process. I do feel there can be a greater institutional engagement of Indian parliamentarians and their counterparts elsewhere. In the year 2019, the joint statement issued by India and the United States after a meeting between the foreign ministers, there was a reference to exchange visits between parliamentarians and congressional delegations. But then, of course, subsequent, the reference was not there. So I have no reason to believe it has moved forward. Of course, I just read that the recent meeting of Estimates Committee where Harivansh was present, I read a report that there is a talk of reviving the parliamentary friendship groups. Now, this was an exercise that began in, I think, around 2004 and 5 by then Speaker Mr. Somnath Chatterjee. So in between it went into a lull, but I just read that report, maybe you could refer to it sometime later. So over the decade, the debate and thought behind foreign policy issues have moved away from the confines of the South Bloc and seeped in across various universities, think tanks, and the ever-growing community of scholars who are focused in niche areas. I do hope this book generates greater interest among all of them. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Ambassador T.C.A. Raghavan to conduct the proceedings. Thank you.
Shri Harivansh, Narayan Singh ji, Honorable Deputy Chairman Rajya Sabha, Shri Sujeet Kumar, Honorable Member of Parliament and member Consultative Committee of the Ministry of External Affairs, Ms. Nutan Kapoor Mahawar, Acting Director General ICWA, K.V. Prasad, the author of the book. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. May I begin by, first of all, expressing a certain sense of being greatly gratified that the ICWA has published this book on the Indian Parliament and its role in shaping foreign policy. I recall on a number of occasions in interactions with the Standing Committee of the Ministry of External Affairs, the question which used to be put to us in the Council was why are not more members of Parliament involved in your activities? And I recall on one occasion I was subjected to a close cross-examination on this by the chairperson, the then chairperson of the Standing Committee, and his point, which was very valid, was that the Council, the ICWA, when it was set up, was not set up as a purely research or academic body, and it was also not set up purely as a policy practitioners body, but the idea was to create a platform in which policy practitioners, academics and researchers, and eminent people in public life interact and synergize with each other, because the feeling of those who created the council, the ICWA in the 1940s, their view was that only through such interaction can we develop an Indian perspective on international affairs. So this emphasis on involving people in public life or eminent personalities of public life in the activities of the council was a central aspect of the establishment of the ICWA. So it's a matter of some gratification for all of us who have been associated with the ICWA that we have a book on the Indian Parliament and its role in shaping the foreign policy of India. And to discuss the book, we have two eminent personalities of our public life today, Shri Harivansh Narayan Singh ji, Honorable Deputy Chairperson of the Rajya, and Shri Sujeet Kumar ji. I would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate the ICWA on its publications program. The publications program of the ICWA is one of its flagship pillars, because there are many books on foreign policy which come out, but the ICWA picks up those areas which otherwise may not interest trade publishers. And the idea is to encourage research and encourage debate into those areas of international affairs and foreign policy which the Council feels should be addressed, and there should be a greater discussion about those particular areas and those particular aspects of our external world today. I'd also like to congratulate the author, Shri K.V. Prasad, for this fine work. This is very evidently a labor of love and the consequence of both his deep research and knowledge, but also his experience as a journalist with a deep knowledge of both external relations, international affairs, and of the functioning of the Indian Parliament. I think these different aspects give this book a special character which you will encounter as you look into the different anecdotes and different illustrations which are there in its chapters. The early chapters of the book provide an excellent overview of the historical background through which the interface between the Parliament of India and Indian foreign policy developed. The meat of the book, as he explained, is in the three case studies which pertain to the IPKF in Sri Lanka, the entry of India into the WTO, and finally the conclusion of the civil nuclear agreement with the United States. Each of these, in the examination of each of these issues and in the discussion of each of these issues in our Parliament, numerous constitutional and legal points emerged, which remain with us in different ways to this day. And one very important question which comes up periodically in this book is of the role of our states in the formulation of foreign policy in a federal structure. And this is a central question for anyone who has looked at India's neighborhood, how states can play a role in creating a more rounded foreign policy approach. I think that's something which we need to reflect upon a great deal. In my own experience, for instance, you cannot think of a foreign policy with regard to Bangladesh or with regard to Nepal or with regard to Bhutan without bringing into the equation the perspective of states such as Assam or West Bengal or Bihar or Uttar Pradesh. Similarly, and this is a somewhat extreme example, but in the case of Pakistan, we cannot really think of a well-rounded policy without bringing into the equation the perspectives of states such as Jammu and Kashmir, Rajasthan, or Punjab. I mean, one example of, for instance, policy towards Pakistan is that of the Kartarpur Sahib visa-free corridor. You know, the visa-free corridor was opened at a time when the India-Pakistan relationship was on a downturn, and it was on a serious downturn after August 2019. But despite that, you find a visa-free corridor being established to allow Sikh pilgrims to go into Pakistan to the Kartarpur Sahib Mosque and to the Kartarpur Sahib Gurdwara, and it was quite a significant step forward at that particular time. And there are other examples also of how the role of the states in foreign policy is something which we constantly have to keep in mind. And this, of course, comes out very, very prominently in the case of Sri Lanka and Tamil Nadu. And there are many other examples also. The other question, for instance, which comes up periodically is whether parliamentary approval is required before specific foreign policy initiatives are taken or before specific regimes or international agreements are entered into. These are issues which have been debated numerous times in our parliament and will continue to be debated in the future also. But I think the interesting part in the book is that through these case studies, we see a wide cross-section of modern Indian history, because it is really from the 1980s till the end of the first decade of this century that you see the parliament foreign policy interface. And it gives an opportunity to see the working of both Indian democracy and also as to how foreign policy is made in a democratic environment. I'd like to quote briefly from a small couple of sentences which from this book. Quote, members of parliament in India have over the last 7.5 decades made continuous efforts to leave an imprint on the country's foreign policy. Parliamentarians also kept on exploring opportunities for institutional interactions between MPs and their counterparts from other countries, including those in the neighborhood. Unquote. Platforms such as the UN General Assembly, the International Parliamentary Union, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, parliamentary delegations visiting other countries really provide examples of how this interaction between parliamentarians, between people's representatives of different countries, play such an important role in the shaping of foreign policy today, not just in India, but in many countries across the world. I don't wish to take too much time because I'm especially keen to hear Shri Harivansh Narayan Singh ji and Shri Sujeet Kumar ji, because I'd like to hear very much their perspectives on this book and also about the role of members of parliament in institutions such as the ICWA and as to how the synergy between academics and researchers, between practitioners and people's representatives can be enhanced and increased in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now may I request Shri Harivansh Narayan Singh, Honorable Deputy Chairman, Rajya Sabha, to make his special remarks. Thank you.
यहाँ मौजूद हमारे ऑनरेबल मेंबर पार्लियामेंट सुजीत कुमार जी, कंसल्टेटिव कमेटी हमारे फॉरेन मिनिस्ट्री के, और एम्बेसडर T.C.A राघवन जी, एक्स DG ICWA, और आई थिंक कि पाकिस्तान में हमारे लास्ट आपका असाइनमेंट था एज ए उच्चायुक्त K.V प्रसाद जी, वरिष्ठ पत्रकार और लेखक, श्री नूतन कपूर महावर जी, इंचार्ज DG ICWA, सभागार में उपस्थित अनेक वरिष्ठ लोगों को मैं देख रहा हूं। हमारे वरिष्ठ विनोद जी थे, अभी शायद मौजूद नहीं, बड़े जाने माने पत्रकार और सभी मित्रों, नमस्कार। सबसे पहले मैं इस पुस्तक के लिए इंडियन पार्लियामेंट शेपिंग फॉरेन पॉलिसी लिखने के लिए K.V प्रसाद जी को बहुत बधाई देना चाहूँगा, और इसको छापने के लिए ICWA को भी। इस अवसर पर दरअसल मैं आपको कन्फेस करूं कि मैं तो सुनने आया अपने सीनियर डिप्लोमेट राघवन साहब को, क्योंकि उनका मैं पाठक भी हूं, और हमारे आत्मीय मित्र सुजीत जी, इनको दुनिया की बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में भी काम करने का अनुभव है, और विदेश नीति पर ख़ास तौर से वह सिर्फ सदस्य ही नहीं है, बहुत सारी चीज़ों को वो आपको बताएंगे। राघवन साहब, जिनकी अनेक बड़ी इम्पॉर्टेंट किताबें हैं, जिन्हें हम सब ने एक पाठक के तौर पे देखा है, जैसे द पीपुल नेक्स्ट टू पाकिस्तान, द हिस्ट्री मैन, मेरे लिए बड़ा फैसिनेटिंग रहा उसको पढ़ना बहुत वर्षों पहले। सर्किल ऑफ फ्रीडम, फ्रेंडशिप, लव एंड लॉयल्टी, कुछ ही दिनों पहले, वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्ट्स। अटेंडेंट लॉर्ड्स, बैरम खान एंड अब्दुल रहमान, कोर्टियर्स एंड पोइट्स इन मुगल इंडिया, उस दौर की पॉलिटिक्स को समझने में इट्स वेरी फुल ऑफ इंसाइटफुल इंफॉर्मेशंस। जहाँ पर ऐसे व्यक्ति जानकार हों, हमारे सुजीत कुमार जी, वो बहुत सारी चीज़ें बताएंगे। पर मैं भारतीय संसद की क्या भूमिका रही है, खासतौर से विदेश नीति के संदर्भ में, इस पर 3 इंपॉर्टेंट केस स्टडीज के द्वारा बहुत गंभीरता से अध्ययन करने के लिए पुनः ICWA को और K.V प्रसाद जी को धन्यवाद देता हूं, और इस पुस्तक के लिए इंडियन पार्लियामेंट शेपिंग फॉरेन पॉलिसी लिखने के लिए उनसे बेहतर कोई और पत्रकार नहीं हो सकता था, क्योंकि 3 डिकेड्स का उनका लंबा अनुभव है। उन्होंने 3 दशकों तक संसद की नियमों, प्रक्रियाओं, उसके साथ साथ भारतीय संसद के अपने मैंडेट के अनुसार कैसे वो काम करती है, इसकी गहरी जानकारी उन्होंने हासिल की है, और पॉलिसी मेकिंग उनमें से एक है। इसलिए इस किताब के साथ उन्होंने बहुत जस्टिस किया विषय के साथ, और संसद के 3 अलग अलग फील्ड्स, खास तौर से 3 एस्पेक्ट्स, जियो सिक्योरिटी, जियो इकोनॉमिक्स और जियो स्ट्रेटेजिक बहसों पर नए ढंग से काम करके तथ्य बताए हैं। साथ ही संविधान सभा और प्रोविजनल पार्लियामेंट के सदस्यों ने हमारी विदेश नीति के बारे में किस तरह से जो उन्होंने सीमा तय की थी उससे आगे जाकर के बढ़ने का प्रयास किया, उन बहसों से बहुत स्पष्ट है। उन्होंने, जैसा आपने सुना, कि खास तौर से श्रीलंका में भारतीय शांति सेना और WTO में भारत के प्रवेश और सिविल न्यूक्लियर लायबिलिटी, इन 3 केसों के माध्यम से 3 अलग अलग समय में 3 डिकेड्स में क्या किस रूप में संसद ने चर्चा की, उसका क्या असर रहा, ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट केस स्टडी एक तरह से है, तीनों है। ये पुस्तक एक किस्म से सांसदों ने किस तरह सरकारी नीतियों पर प्रभाव डाला है, उनकी बहस और चर्चा और प्रस्ताव के माध्यम से क्या असर पड़ा है, इसका एक गंभीर अध्ययन है। श्री प्रसाद ने बड़े रियलिस्टिक ढंग से निष्कर्ष निकाला है कि सिविल न्यूक्लियर लायबिलिटी एक्ट के मामले को छोड़ करके किस तरह से सरकार ने राष्ट्रीय हित में अपना काम किया और महत्वपूर्ण ढंग से भारत के हितों के लिए उन्होंने अपने कदम उठाए। यह किताब हमारे खास तौर से राजनीति विज्ञान और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस के जो विद्वान और छात्र हैं उनके लिए बहुत ही इम्पॉर्टेंट रिसोर्स बुक है। हाल ही में हमारे जो मेंबर पार्लियामेंट डेलीगेशन 30 देशों में गए ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के बाद, जिनमें सभी पार्टियों के माननीय सदस्यों का डेलीगेशन था, इसमें पार्लियामेंट का रोल फॉरेन पॉलिसी और डिप्लोमेसी में कितने महत्वपूर्ण ढंग से रेखांकित हुआ, ये फॉरेन पॉलिसी हमारे नेशनल इंटरेस्ट का रिफ्लेक्शन है। यह पार्लियामेंट का फोरम नेशनल इंटरेस्ट डिसाइड करने का सबसे श्रेष्ठ माध्यम है। सरकार के अन्य मंत्रालयों की तरह ही विदेश मंत्रालय के कामकाज की निगरानी भी पार्लियामेंट करती है। फॉरेन पॉलिसी का एक बड़ा व्यवहारिक पक्ष है डिप्लोमेसी। आप समझ सकते हैं कि देश के अंदर एक इन्फॉर्म्ड कंसेंसस बनाना और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मुद्दों पर एकजुट रुख रखना हमारी डिप्लोमेसी का कितना चैलेंजिंग और इम्पॉर्टेंट हिस्सा है, काम है। संसद ने अपनी स्थापना से ही पार्लियामेंट्री डिप्लोमेसी को इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज करने का प्रयत्न किया। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय पार्लियामेंट्रियन फोरम्स भी हैं, जैसे ब्रिक्स पार्लियामेंट्री फोरम, G20 पार्लियामेंट्री फोरम, IPU, CPA, अलग अलग। इसमें भी लगातार हमारे सांसद जाते हैं और दुनिया के चैलेंजिंग इश्यू पर वो डिबेट, अलग अलग प्रस्तावों पर बात करते हैं। इससे वो दुनिया के जनमत को भी प्रभावित करने की कोशिश करते हैं। मैं याद दिलाना चाहूँगा कि 16 अगस्त 1948 को संविधान सभा में कैसे प्रधानमंत्री जवाहरलाल नेहरू जी ने इंडियन पार्लियामेंट्री ग्रुप्स के गठन का प्रस्ताव पेश किया। IPG का गठन 1949 में हुआ। तब से IPG ने पार्लियामेंट्री डिप्लोमेसी में अपने मैंडेट को और एक्सपेंड किया। यह समूह विदेशी सांसदों के साथ डेलीगेशंस, गुडविल मिशंस, करेस्पॉन्डेंस, डॉक्यूमेंट्स आदि के आदान प्रदान के माध्यम से भारत की संसद और दुनिया की अन्य संसदों के बीच एक प्रभावी लिंक के रूप में काम करता है। यह इंटर पार्लियामेंट्री यूनियन और भारत की कॉमनवेल्थ पार्लियामेंट्री एसोसिएशन की मेन ब्रांच के रूप में भी काम करता है। उसमें MPs का बड़ा ही महत्वपूर्ण रोल है। मैं दूसरी एक बात और जोड़ना चाहूँगा इसमें। पिछले 10 वर्षों में एक सांसद के रूप में या डिप्टी चेयरमैन के रूप में मुझे जितनी इस तरह के कॉन्फ्रेंसेस को जाने का मौका मिला, उसमें एक तथ्य मेरे सामने जो आया मैं आपसे शेयर करना चाहूँगा। बहुत पहले, लगभग 2013 के आसपास, मैंने किताब पढ़ी थी ली क्योन यू के ऊपर, द ग्रैंड मास्टर्स इनसाइट्स ऑन चाइना, द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स एंड द वर्ल्ड। वो एक तरह का इंटरव्यू और अलग अलग सिलेक्शंस हैं उनके विचारों का, उनसे बातचीत का। 3 लोगों ने किया था जिसकी भूमिका हेनरी किसिंगर ने लिखी। ग्राहम एलिसन, रॉबर्ट डी ब्लैकवेल विथ एली वैन। वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग बुक। 2013, आज से लगभग 12-13 वर्ष पहले लगभग मैंने पढ़ी। आज जब मैं आपकी किताब के लिए आ रहा था तो उसके तथ्य कई मेरे दिमाग में आए। पिछले 10-12 वर्षों में इंटरनेशनल फोरम्स पर, इंपॉर्टेंट मंच पर, कई जगह सुजीत जी के साथ रहते हुए भी जो मैंने रियलाइज किया कि अंततः फॉरेन पॉलिसी में क्या पिछले 30-40 सालों में बदलाव आया है। उस पुस्तक में द फ्यूचर ऑफ चाइना, द फ्यूचर ऑफ यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स, द फ्यूचर ऑफ US चाइना रिलेशंस, द फ्यूचर ऑफ इंडिया, द फ्यूचर ऑफ जियो पॉलिटिक्स एंड ग्लोबलाइजेशन, बहुत ही इंसाइटफुल विचार हैं। मैं कई बार सोचता हूं कि दुनिया के इंटरनेशनल फोरम्स पर जिन इश्यूज को हम डिबेट करते हैं, डिस्कस करते हैं, उन पे आपके अंदर की आर्थिक ताकत आज कितना असर डालती है। मेरे मन में कई बार सवाल होता है कि हमारे पड़ोस का देश अगर 78 में जो बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट फ्रेज हम लोगों ने दुनिया में सुना कि वेदर कैट इज ब्लैक और वाइट टिल इट कैचेज माइस, अगर नहीं होता, वो पॉलिसी चेंज नहीं होती, तो आज, और इकोनॉमिक साइज में आपसे 5 गुना बड़ा नहीं होता, तो आज उसके यहाँ उइगर इशू, ह्यूमन राइट्स इशू और अनेक ऐसे मुल्क मिलते हैं हमें दुनिया के कई प्लेटफॉर्म्स पे जिन देशों से उसके अपने निजी MOU हैं, रेयर अर्थ मिनरल से लेकर अनेक चीजों पर, विच इज नॉट इन द पब्लिक डोमेन। उनका क्या असर होता है। मैं मानता हूं कि आज की तारीख में हमारी पीढ़ी जब तक बड़ी हो रही थी, वो नॉन अलाइनमेंट मूवमेंट, पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजी किस तरह से असर डालती थी, उस दौर में हम पल और बढ़ रहे थे। हम जब बिल्कुल क्या आपको बताऊं, जिसे आप रूरल इंडिया कहते हैं, उन इलाकों में थे, तब भी वियतनाम का सवाल गूंजता था। तो आइडियोलॉजी कैसे पॉलिटिक्स को किसी हद तक प्रभावित करती थी हमारे जीवन में भी। पर आज किसी देश का इकोनॉमिक पावर, आपका चाहे जो भी मल्टीलेटरल इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं, हाउ द वे दे टॉक, जिनके पास ये इकोनॉमिक पावर का कॉन्फिडेंस है, दैट इज इंटायरली डिफरेंट फ्रॉम दोज कंट्रीज जिनके पास ये नहीं। तो इकोनॉमिक पावर आज की तारीख में किस तरह चीज़ों पर गहरा असर डाल रहा है, ये एक बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट एलिमेंट है। और हमारे मेंबर्स पार्लियामेंट आमतौर पे इन सारी चीज़ों पर जब भी मैं देखता हूँ, चाहे हमारे यहाँ किसी डिबेट पर या हमारे यहाँ डिफरेंट अपने जो पार्लियामेंट में जिसका आपने उल्लेख किया है, क्वेश्चन आवर से लेकर 0 आवर से लेकर के, और अनेक चीज़ों पर अपने स्टेट्स के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में सवाल उठाते हैं। जैसे साउथ के स्टेट्स न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट के बारे में जो सवाल उठाते हैं, बिहार वगैरह के लोग जो नेपाल के संदर्भ में अपनी बात कहते हैं, जो राघवन साहब कह रहे थे, बंगाल जो या पड़ोस के देश जो बांग्लादेश के बारे में कंसर्न है, साउथ जो श्रीलंका के बारे में है, इन सब चीज़ों के बारे में अंततः इनके वॉइस को रिफ्लेक्ट करते हुए चीज़ें जो पार्लियामेंट में आती हैं, कोई सरकार उनको इग्नोर नहीं कर सकती। दे हैव टू मेक ए कंसेंसस फॉर दैट। लेकिन इन सब के पीछे आपकी इकोनॉमिक माइट कैसे चीज़ों को पर असर डालती है। मैं लास्ट चीज़ आपसे कहना चाहूँगा, कोविड के दौरान का। कोविड के शुरू में जब हम लोग इंटरनेशनल डेलीगेशन में जाते थे, जब भारत टीका नहीं बना रहा था, तो किस तरह का परसेप्शन था, और जब भारत टीका बनाने लगा, किस तरह से दुनिया के दूसरे मुल्क, उनको लगा कि विश्वसनीय टीका हमारे यहाँ बन रहा है, तो क्या उसका असर हुआ। आपने देखा डावोस में जब वो बैठक हो रही थी 2 साल पहले, तो फार्मास्यूटिकल कंपनी जो दुनिया की बड़ी नामी है, मैं किसी का नाम नहीं ले रहा, किस तरह से पत्रकारों ने पूछा, किस तरह से सॉवरेनिटी उनकी वो बंधक बनाने की बात कर रहे थे टीका देने के बजाय, जिसमें भारत भी शामिल था। हमारे यहाँ हमारे साइंटिस्टों ने वो किताब शायद ICHR के डायरेक्टर ने लिखी है, बहुत ही बेहतर किताब, जिस पे फिल्म बनी, द वैक्सीन वॉर। इट्स वर्थ रीडिंग। अगर हमारी इकोनॉमिक माइट, हमारा रिसर्च, हमारा साइंटिफिक जो R&D है, ये दुनिया में अगर ताकत बनता है, दैट हैज ए काइंड ऑफ डिफरेंट इन्फ्लुएंस ऑन आवर फॉरेन अफेयर्स। आपने बहुत अच्छी किताब लिखी, इसके लिए मैं पुनः बधाई देते हुए, और मैंने जैसा कहा, मैं तो राघवन साहब और सुजीत जी को सुनने आया हूँ, एक्सपर्ट्स के बीच आया हूँ। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you, sir. May I now request Shri Sujeet Kumar ji, Honorable Member of Parliament, to kindly make his remarks.
Honorable Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha, Shri Harivansh ji, and I am blessed to receive his guidance on a daily basis in the Parliament. Ambassador Raghavan ji, one of our most distinguished diplomat, the author of the book, Shri Prasad, Madam Nutan Kapoor, friends, good afternoon, namaskar. I also have an ICWA connection. I am on the governing council of ICWA. We just not mentioned, so I thought I should make it public. First of all, at the outset, let me congratulate Shri K.V. Prasad ji for the scholarly and intellectual work. Though he said that this book is not academic, it's not academic oriented, that was his own confession. But given that there is very little literature on this subject, on the interface of foreign policy and Indian Parliament, I think this is a very, very scholarly work that highlights the constitutional, historical, and political role played by the Indian Parliament in influencing our national foreign policy. And honestly, less is known to the outer world about the work of the Indian Parliament in shaping our foreign policy. So my sincere compliment to you, and my gratitude and sincere compliment to ICWA for publishing this book, and also my thanks to you for inviting me. It's an honor and pleasure to be here today. Also, I feel that, Mr. Prasad, you had some prophecy while writing the book because of the recent developments. And the book discussion that we're having today in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor in the aftermath of our delegations going around the world, telling our narrative to the world, and also in the light of the recent statement made by Honorable Om Birla ji, sir, you were there, when he said that it's time for us to revive our parliamentary friendship group. So I think it's very prophetic that we are having this book discussion in the light of this recent development. And if I were you, I would have actually put a question mark at the end of the title of the book. Indian Parliament shaping foreign policy. So whether the Indian Parliament shapes foreign policy is something that I will deliberate on. I'm a huge votary and a huge advocate of greater interaction between MEA and our Parliament. Unfortunately, that's not the case today. Let me be very honest with you. I've been telling anyone who is willing to listen, including ICWA, think tanks, the diplomatic corps, and of course during the consultative meeting of the MEA, that there should be far greater interaction between our parliament members and the geopolitical community, which is happening, but not to the extent what is required. So, oftentimes, I think the blame lies on both the sides. Parliamentarians, particularly members of the Lok Sabha, because of their constituency work, because of their political engagement otherwise, are unable to devote as much time to issues of foreign policy, because frankly, it doesn't get you vote, unless the border states. If it's Tripura or Bengal, then okay, issues pertaining to Bangladesh might fetch you some votes. If it's Tamil Nadu, then it can, issues of fishermen getting arrested by the Sri Lankan Navy, or issues of LTTE, or the plight of the Tamils in Sri Lanka might arouse passion in Tamil Nadu. But otherwise, if you talk of foreign policy or world affairs or international relations in your constituency, frankly, it's not going to help you win elections. So to that extent, our politicians and the political class is rather diffident in devoting time to foreign policy. And equally culpable is the MEA and the wider ecosystem, which I don't know why, but has been rather reluctant to engage with parliamentarians. So oftentimes it becomes like preaching to the converted. And this is something which I have been going around trying to tell that it's extremely necessary, given the recent developments, given the fact that executive accountability to the legislature is part of our constitution. In our constitutional scheme of things, the executive is accountable to the legislature through various parliamentary tools, through various parliamentary interventions, whether it's the question hour or parliamentary committees, or through short duration discussion, which was mentioned by Mr. Prasad. So we have in our political scheme of things the executive accountability to the legislature, which is actually pronounced in pretty much every other aspect of policy making, but less so in the arena of foreign policy. Yes, Mr. Prasad in his book has critically examined 3 case studies, which gives a clue as to the relevance and the importance and the depth of discussions that happened during those critical phases, and the impact which the parliament could make or could not make in the outcome of those 3 landmark events of those decades. But apart from political compulsions, apart from the fact that members of parliament have multiple commitments, and a typical member of parliament of the Lok Sabha represents anywhere between 15 lakh to 35 lakh people. So that's a huge commitment which is necessary for the constituency. But beyond that, MPs also adopt an approach towards foreign policy which is dictated by political compulsions, which is dictated by the approach of their political party. To give a classic example, and that has been elaborated at length during the Indo-US nuclear deal, the behavior of certain political parties on the floor of the House was dictated by the political compulsions, by the ideology of the particular party to which the member belonged to, or to the need of the hour. But the role of Parliament in foreign policy making has always agitated members of Parliament right from the very beginning, whether it's with regards to India's, whether India should join the Commonwealth or not, the China and Tibet policy of the then Prime Minister Nehru, the Indo-China War of 1962. And in fact, I'm a huge critic of Pandit Nehru, but I must acknowledge that he was a Democrat at heart. And after the 1962 debacle, there was, of course, discussion in the parliament about the causes of the war, and members of the opposition parties and even some members of the Congress party, his own party colleagues, bitterly attacked Pandit Nehru on his China policy, particularly on his Panchsheel doctrine and on his advocacy of giving the UN Security Council the permanent seat to China. So that came under attack in the parliamentary debates. But I must mention that the Indian Parliament passed a resolution on the 8th of November 1962, which resolved to drive out the aggressor from the sacred soil of India. So I think this is one of the first resolutions that the Indian Parliament passed, at least with regards to any foreign policy issue or any strategic issue. And then, of course, the East Pakistan crisis of 1971, which led to the creation of Bangladesh, and we know the outcome. And none other than Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Bharat Ratna, hailed on the floor of the House Mrs. Gandhi as Durga. This is true bipartisanship, true statesmanship. And then, of course, the three case studies, there were elaborate consultations, discussions, intervention by members on the floor of the houses, both the houses, the sending of the Indian peacekeeping force to Sri Lanka, and that not only changed the geopolitical outcome of the subcontinent, but also changed the political dynamics within the country. And the reverberations are felt even today. The two main political parties in Tamil Nadu, the DMK and the AIDMK, they keep changing their political affiliations based on, of course, political compulsions, but also on the happenings in the island nation. Now, why did I say that if I were the author, I would have put a question mark at the end of the title? It's because members cutting across party lines have argued and have demanded greater executive accountability to the parliament in crafting of our foreign policy and also in the execution or implementation of the foreign policy. Now, this has come up time and again, intermittently, till as late as the first decade of the 21st century. And I will quote the then Lok Sabha Speaker Somnath Chatterjee. Lok Sabha Speaker Somnath Chatterjee's ruling rejecting the demand for voting on the Indo-US nuclear deal puts the parliament's role in foreign policy matters into perspective. As Chatterjee stated, and I quote, there is no requirement to obtain, there's no requirement, this is Somnath Chatterjee as the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. There is no requirement to obtain ratification of the Parliament for any treaty or agreement for its operation or enforcement. Parliament can only discuss any treaty or agreement entered into by the government without affecting its finality or enforceability. He ruled that the issue, the Indo-US nuclear deal, is because the opposition parties then, BJP and the left parties, they were demanding that there should be a vote on this. So he ruled that the issue would be discussed under Rule 193 of the Lok Sabha, which had no provision for voting. This principle that the parliament can only discuss any treaty or agreement without any right to vote, this has also been affirmed by the Honorable Supreme Court of India, which said that the power of entering into a treaty is an inherent power of the sovereign power of the state under Article 73 of the Indian Constitution. Subject to the provision of the Constitution, the executive power of the Union extends to the matter concerning which Parliament has the power to make laws. Our Constitution makes no provision making legislation a condition for the entry into any international treaty in times of either war or peace. So we have two authoritative pronouncements, one by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha and one by the Honorable Supreme Court, which has more or less settled that yes, the Parliament can debate, deliberate, discuss on any international treaty or agreement, but cannot claim or cannot demand that there should be a vote on any treaty or any agreement which the executive is entitled to pursue. However, if any international treaty or agreement, or if the government of India has entered into any treaty or agreement, will it be automatically applicable in the Indian soil? That's a big if. Here I like to quote another judgment of the Supreme Court, that is Magan Bhai Iswarlal Patel versus Union of India. Here the Honorable Supreme Court has said that in terms, I'm quoting the Honorable Supreme Court, in terms the article deals with legislative power, thereby power is conferred upon the Parliament which it may not otherwise possess. But it does not seek to circumscribe the extent of the executive power conferred by Article 73. The exercise of this power must be supported by legislation only if, in consequence of the exercise, rights of citizens or others are restricted or any laws are modified. So only to give effect. So any international obligation or treaty will come into effect in India, and the Parliament has the right to bring any law if the rights of the citizens of the country are affected or any law has to be modified. So there is actually a bit of paradox here, that on the one hand we talk of executive accountability to the legislature, on the one hand we talk of the primacy that should be given to Indian Parliament and to the members of Parliament in shaping our policies, because at the end of the day the Parliament is the voice of we the people of India. And on the other hand, the primacy that has been given under Article 73 and has been affirmed by the judicial pronouncements and by the ruling of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha to the executive. So there is this paradox which I think has not been researched in depth. So to that extent, I feel, Mr. Prasad, that your book will catalyze greater conversation in this area. And I sincerely compliment you for that. And I did mention about our current Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Shri Om Birla ji, who has actually initiated a conversation about institutionalizing our foreign policy, or at least our inter-parliamentary diplomacy, by stressing that we should reignite the parliamentary friendship groups which have actually become dormant for the last 2 decades. So, because inter-parliamentary diplomacy is a very, very powerful tool. Based on my own personal experience, I can tell you, I have had the good fortune of visiting many countries as a member of parliament on various delegations. And I can tell you the effectiveness and the efficacy of these inter-parliamentary delegations. It not only leads to greater socio-cultural political ties between the two countries, it also leads to sharing of knowledge. It also leads to greater awareness in the host countries about the current developments in India. And I can give you an example. You know, most of you know that we are a highly digitized nation. And in fact, Honorable Prime Minister has articulated our goal of becoming a $1 trillion digital economy by 2030. And we are actually on the way to reach that goal. And one of the key elements of this digital aspiration that we have is our real-time payment capability. And when I tell to my non-Indian friends, particularly to my European friends, that last year, India had 200 billion UPI transactions. UPI is this real-time digital payment. 200 billion. First of all, they say 200 million, that's a big number. So I tell them, my friend, it's not 200 million, it's 200 billion. They say 200 billion transactions in a single year? I said, yes. That's the, the capability of our country that we are talking about. And this can happen only in such informal interparliamentary settings. So this is why I'm a huge votary of institutionalizing parliamentary diplomacy, and this multi-party delegation that was sent by our Honorable Prime Minister is a classic example of the potential and the effectiveness of such interparliamentary delegations and parliamentary delegations, diplomacy. So I'll conclude by giving a call to, actually it's a call to my fellow parliamentarians, my colleagues, and sir is here. So with his permission, I would like to say that I think the Indian Parliament should reclaim the democratic space in India's foreign policy, in the shaping and the execution of India's foreign policy. Because the Parliament is the voice of the people. And truly speaking, diplomacy should be democratized. When Prime Minister took the G20 beyond Delhi to almost 200 destinations, that was true democratization of diplomacy. And that's what, as a democratic nation, as the largest democracy on earth, that's what it should be. So thank you, Mr. Prasad, for this illuminating book. And I sincerely hope that it will not be the last project of yours in this area. And this will stimulate more conversations. And I urge ICWA to organize more discussions on this area, particularly on the interface of diplomacy and the parliament. And thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now may I request the chair to moderate the question answer.
Thank you very much. We have heard two very thought-provoking and incisive remarks from Honorable Shri Harivansh Narayan Singh ji and Shri Sujeet Kumar ji, and we've also heard a very, very good summary of the main thrust of the book under discussion today. So if there are any, I'm sure there'll be many questions. May I request you to be brief and also identify yourself, and if required, you can also mention who you would like from the panel to answer the question. Thank you. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Really, we had a very illuminating discussion on this book. Incidentally, first of all, I must congratulate Prasad ji for his book. We are old friends. In fact, I had the fortune of reviewing this book in the Business Standard. And I have a mixed background. That's why, I feel provoked to take a little bit more time. I'm a retired officer from the Parliament Secretariat and also a research scholar working on China and other fields. So, Sujeet Prasad ji alluded to the parliamentary resolution on China on 8 December 1962. That resolution was, in fact, relating to the declaration of national emergency, and the reference to China was a partial. But then normally that resolution there. Now, this resolution is a sort of handicap for our negotiation. Reason being, we took a pledge that unless we dislodge those who had occupied, there won't be any talk. But look, immediately after passing the resolution, India agreed to the ceasefire by China. So where was the sanctity of that resolution? It raises, the heated debate, the desirability of the heated debate in Parliament. Should we do or shouldn't we do it? In fact, this was raised by eminent lawyers like many lawyers and diplomats. They've raised this issue. Is it good or not? So that is a major handicap, because when you negotiate, so that is why, when the opposition parties are demanding for a no-hold-barred discussion in the Parliament, should we do it? The government is now dodging it. The reason being that, they will embarrass government. So when we have other formats like, say, standing committees, consultative committees, my point is that, and it involves certain sensitivity, certain secrecy, those things are there. So I would like to know from the Honorable Deputy Chairman and Sujeet Kumar ji, whether is it not that the consultative committee or some other mechanism cannot be, maybe perhaps be a better platform to discuss this issue rather than on the floor of the House, because it's debates are televised, and there will be hardening attitude.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Actually, I completely agree with you, Dr. Das. In fact, the Consultative Committee has couple of times discussed the China issue post-Galwan. I've been a member of the committee since 2020, so, and that's the time when Galwan happened. So at least half a dozen times the Honorable Minister has briefed the committee, and as you rightly pointed, some of the discussions are should not happen on the floor of the House because it's televised, and some of them, some of these are actually sensitive matters. So from a strategic point of view, from a diplomatic point of view, and you know it better than anyone else that the border negotiations were ongoing, so a lot of things could not have been said in public. Particularly in a vibrant democracy like ours, where every word would be dissected and probably misunderstood and misrepresented by the opposition parties. So so the members have been taken into confidence by the ministry. That I can assure you. And whether there should be greater discussion on this issue, the minister, honorable minister, made a statement on both on in Lok Sabha and in Rajya Sabha on the issue Galwan and the post-Galwan negotiations discussions. He has made a statement. So I think the government is not dodging a discussion on this. Given the sensitivity and sensibility, I think it's better that this should be discussed behind closed doors.
Just I will add one point, sir. आपने बड़े रेलिवेंट पॉइंट उठाए, लेकिन आपने देखा होगा कि कई बार जब सेंसिटिव इश्यूज आते हैं, खासतौर से बॉर्डर्स के, तो उस वक्त जो भी कंसर्न मिनिस्टर है अपने बयान देने के बाद आमतौर से बहुत सारे मेंबर सवाल उस पर नहीं पूछते. एक ये हमारे यहाँ आपसी एक क्या कहें पुरानी परंपरा बनी हुई है. सो वी अबाइड बाय दैट. और कई चीज़ों पर आपने सही कहा, वो सेंसिटिव चीज़ों का हमें ध्यान रखना ही चाहिए. लेट अस हैव मोर फेथ ऑन आवर मेंबर पार्लियामेंट्स कि धीरे धीरे उन मर्यादाओं को समझेंगे, दे विल फॉलो इट. जैसे हम आज भी कई इनमें से इशूज हुए अभी अरुणाचल वगैरह में, तो आपने देखा कि मंत्री के बयान के बाद कंसर्न मिनिस्टर जब बयान उस पर दे देते हैं तो कोई आमतौर से सवाल नहीं पूछता. थैंक यू.
Sir, can I just add?
हाँ.
In fact, I'll give an example. 8 of our ex-naval officers were arrested by the Qatari establishment on charges of spying, right, on espionage. And I was the one who raised this issue. I asked this to the Honorable Minister, that 8 of our ex-national heroes are behind bars in Qatar, and MA is not forthcoming as to what their crime is. Are they in good condition, because their family members have apprehension that they have been tortured, and why is MA, and probably I could do it because I was in a different party then, so that I must admit. But the Honorable Minister very categorically said that no, we are seized of the matter, our ambassador is seized of the matter, we are in touch with the families and with the Qatari establishment, and I will assure the House that the discussions are happening at the highest level, and very soon we should see some breakthrough, and we will be welcoming our countrymen, and that's what happened. And he said, please don't persist with this matter further. That's all I can say. So as members, we have to be cognizant, and we have to be respectful of our national interest, and how far can we discuss any matter. We need to know that and respect that boundary.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
My name is Rohit Mishra. I also have a mixed background. I am part of Parliament Secretariat, had the opportunity to serve Deputy Chairman, sir, and currently I am Additional PS to Minister of State for External Affairs, Mr. K.V. So my question is to Mr. K.V. Prasad. Fortunately, I also had the opportunity to do a course under him. So my question is to Mr. K.V. Prasad. Sir, what is your, of course you have used a case study method. What was your criteria of selecting the 3 case studies? Like you could have chosen India-China war, which was debated at length for 200 hours, more than 200 hours, and luminaries like Pandit Hridaynath Kunjuru of Sapru House Acharya Kripalani, so many luminaries had participated in debate. Tibet War, Acharya Kripalani Ram Manohar Lohia was there, and Kargil War. So what was your criteria of selecting these debates? Thank you.
Thank you. One, let me say, on this Sino-Indian War, there has been a lot of literature. So I thought I'll be investing too much time in something which has already been debated and discussed in a variety of places. In fact, Dr. Das himself has been a scholar with IDSA on the same subject. So he has published some papers on that too. And secondly, my familiarity with these three debates was also because I was around the same time reporting on these issues. So it was much easier for me to go and invest time and get out and had some personal knowledge of the negotiations at that point of time. In fact, I was prompted to share an anecdote here. You were mentioning on foreign policy not getting votes, right? And I should confess that this was when the nuclear deal was happening, and I was covering the left parties and the Congress parties for the Hindu. And at one point of time, I was in discussion with a senior left party leader, and he threw his hands in exasperation. He said, अरे भाई समझते क्यों नहीं फॉरेन पॉलिसी पे कोई सरकार गिराता है क्या रोटी कपड़ा मकान पे गिराओ तो वोट मिलेंगे So I do admit foreign policy is not a priority, but having said that, it also has now expanded because today no parliamentarian can say, I'm not going to involve. I mean, you have a NRI community, you have a OCI community almost in every state. And what gets affected, so member of parliament automatically gets drawn into those issues. And those are on the aspect of it. But that was primarily my concern because I had covered this, so I had some inside experience of negotiations went on, especially on the nuclear deal, both from the Indian perspective and the American perspective. So it gave a unique opportunity. So that was the primary criteria. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the lady. Maybe we'll take 2-3 questions together. Yes, please.
Good evening to everyone. Truly, it's been insightful being a part of the discussion, and I would say, one of the younger people here, and I'm much less learned, so please bear with me if I make any mistakes or misspeak. My question is in reference to, so you did allude to and refer to the Sindoor operation, but I wanted to focus on something that's current and ongoing as well, so I could get insight of all the panel members here. So currently, the situation with Iran and Israel, which is currently happening, again, US has once again proven the fact that it continues to be in chokehold in terms of economic and political power, involving itself in situations and maybe problems that maybe an insight from them isn't required in, which continues to weaken India's position as we are an economic global power, yet we are considered as one of the developing nations. We are considered to be the voice of Global South, as you guys mentioned. But at the same time, we are also expected to represent ourselves and the interests of Global South. My question is, how does one, since economic problems contain a lot of foreign policy, how do we as a nation proceed further in issues where, for example, in terms of Iraq, Iran, and Israel, oil is something that is continuously in question. India had the great foresight of understanding that Middle East is a region not only in political turmoil, but we had the consciousness to actively get Russia involved so that now our dependency on oil from the Middle East has decreased by a decent amount. My question is, as members of obviously as you guys represent academics as well as people who are already participating in policy practicing, how do you possess such sort of foresight into seeing and predicting that in a global state where there is constant political turmoil in multiple parts of the nation, how do you navigate this challenging process of policy making, and how do you proceed forward ensuring that India is not put in a position where there is extreme dependency on any nation, considering oftentimes we are not backed up by nations because of our hostile neighbors as well as our growing dominance. So that's my question.
Thank you. Let's take 1 or 2 more questions. Yes, yes.
Manish Chand, Center for Global India Insights. Sujeet ji, you are a co-chair of the IPAC, Interparliamentary Alliance on China. Do you see a cross-party consensus in Indian Parliament on dealing with China? And when we are talking about reviving friendship groups, what role can friendship groups play in turning around adversarial relations, say for example with China or Pakistan? Thank you.
And we'll take a third question. Yes, yes.
Hello. Greetings of the evening to the honorable panel. My name is Walter, and like my friend here, I'm also young. I'm a lawyer, and I worked with the Ministry of External Affairs, especially in the Legal and Treaties Division. And in my experience there, I would like to pose in front to the panel a question about how, going forward, given India's assertiveness in its economic might, as Sir had pointed out, and its influence, where in times of WTO, we had to actually take what the global countries were telling us, this is what you should do, and we didn't have a lot of negotiating power. Now that we do, what is the scope of, when we are negotiating multilateral treaties, either in climate change or let's say in international criminal law, which I worked on? When I noticed that we didn't have a lot of parliamentary support, even though parliaments were lawmakers, and that is their forte. So in international law and going for all these agreements which require a lot of drafting expertise and consensus across multiple interests, what experiences can we learn from WTO, the example in the case study, or going forward, how do we ensure that there is a lot of dialogue between the parliamentarians, special academics, as well as those who are actually in the foreign policy apparatus? Thank you.
No, on the question of how can India secure its interests. Now, this is a generic question, a generic issue, which all countries confront, because you are in the world today, and not just today, it's always been the case. There are never any perfect choices. You always have to make trade-offs. You have to make certain judgment calls, and you have to also undertake a certain amount of course correction from time to time. How do we ensure that all this is taking place in a robust manner? And there are many answers. One of them is to have what was referred to earlier as domain knowledge, to have a core of highly trained and competent professionals like we do. But to my mind, one of the most important things in the context of this book is also how do you have a vibrant public debate. If there is a vibrant public debate on any issue which involves choices, you can be pretty sure that the government will make a more informed and a better choice. But may I now ask Shri Sujeet Kumar to respond to the question about friendship groups, and then perhaps Shri Harivansh Narayan Singh, that can we leverage friendship groups?
That I think the question was asked in the context of China and the IPAC. So IPAC, for those who are unaware of what it is, it's called the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China. So this was started in 2020 by by a group of parliamentarians who we got together, MPs from about 18-20 countries, all democratic countries, to call the bluff of China on human rights, on its expansionist designs, on its abysmal records in Xinjiang, East Turkestan, and in Tibet. When the whole world was busy fighting the coronavirus, again, which was unleashed by China onto the world, China kept pushing its expansionist ambitions. So that was the original thought process behind setting up this IPAC. And yes, I'm one of the co-chair, and then there's another co-chair. He was with the Congress party before, but now he has joined BJP. So now both the co-chairs are from BJP, but the bylaw of the IPAC is that at least one of the co-chairs should be from the opposition party. So we need to correct that. But the larger issue of consensus, yes, I think by and large there is consensus on foreign policy matters within the country. Yes, there could be internal differences, there could be argument about the way of handling a particular issue, but I think we are fortunate that in the last 75 years, by and large, we have seen broader all-party consensus on issues, whether it's pertaining to Bangladesh, China, US or our equation with the two major blocs during the Cold War. So to that extent we are fortunate. But as Ambassador Raghavan mentioned, because we are a democracy, because national interest is paramount, whichever party or coalition is there in the government, so there has to be informed decision. So the government of the day should be put to scrutiny unless it's an extremely sensitive or a strategic issue. I think the government of the day should be put into scrutiny by the public, and that can happen only when there is a massive consultation, debate, which is happening actually. You know, you switch on your TV and you will know what a noisy democracy we are. So that to that extent we are extremely fortunate. Right.
जस्ट 2 पॉइंट ऐड कर दूं आप मेरी दृष्टि में फॉरेन पॉलिसी एंड इंस्ट्रूमेंट कि किस तरह हम नेशनल इंटरेस्ट को प्रोटेक्ट कर सकें बेसिक चीज़ नंबर 2 जो भारत करता रहा शुरू से दूसरा भारत की एक अपनी ट्रेडिशन रही है हम लोग दुनिया में कभी युद्ध के पक्ष में नहीं जो आज हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी बार बार कहते हैं हमारे लिए युद्ध मजबूरी जो हम पे थोपा गया पर एक दुनिया में ये माहौल तो रहना ही चाहिए कि युद्ध के पक्ष में कम से कम भारत नहीं है थर्ड बहुत सारी चीज़ों पर जैसा हमारे राघवन साहब ने कहा कि पब्लिक डिबेट जितना अधिक होगा इन्फॉर्म पब्लिक डिबेट उसका इम्पैक्ट किसी भी सरकार पर जो देन गवर्नमेंट है उस पर इसका असर होता है एंड दैट विल गिव ए काइंड ऑफ शेप टू इट एंड लास्ट टू पीपल्स रिलेशनशिप अंततः हमारे फ्रेंडशिप जो पार्लियामेंट्री ग्रुप से उनसे बनता है जब हम एक मुल्क से दूसरे मुल्क में फ्रेंडशिप ग्रुप के द्वारा जाते हैं तो हमारा जो इंटरेक्शन होता है इट्स अ काइंड ऑफ अ डिफरेंट लेवल वो हमारा निगोसिएशन जो गवर्नमेंट टू गवर्नमेंट लेवल पर होता है उससे अलग होता है जो एक तरह से दोनों देशों के बीच कॉर्डियल रिलेशंस को बनाने में दैट प्लेज एन इम्पॉर्टेंट रोल वेरी वेरी सीजन एंड सीरियस मतलब लंबा अनुभव है आपका यू कैन आई थिंक टेल ऑन दैट मोर कि ये पार्लियामेंट्री ग्रुप्स के रिलेशनशिप एक तरह से पीपल्स टू पीपल्स कॉन्टेक्ट जो होता है उसको मजबूत करता है दो देशों के बीच संबंध को
Well, that's absolutely true. You know, one thing which one learns is that a lot of wisdom comes after retirement. And one bit of wisdom which has come to me is that when you're sitting in the Ministry of External Affairs, you think that foreign policy is being made in Delhi. But wisdom tells you that that is wrong. Actually, foreign policy is being made in many different places, and Delhi is just one of those places. And all public figures, whether they are members of parliament or otherwise active in public life, play an enormous role in the making of foreign policy. And when one interacts with our senior ministers and so on, we think that as officials we are the only ones giving inputs. But actually they are receiving inputs from a very vast range of sources and different kinds of inputs. So the official input is only one part of the process of decision making. But as I said, sometimes wisdom comes only after retirement. Can we take one more round of, or if there are any more questions?
Was your question answered?
Yes, was your question? No, your question was not. Was about the role of domain knowledge. I think
how best can parliamentarians interact more with the ministry officials who are actually in debates, especially going forward, in areas like international criminal law, which is being negotiated. And now that we have the negotiating power, which we didn't have during WTO 1995. So I want to know that, okay, now that we are having this discussion, what can we do? How can we help our ambassadors or our special representatives in all of these things and use our legislative experience? You know, we are lawmakers at the end of the day. How can that help?
No, thank you. Yeah, that's a good question. In fact, it's something which has often intrigued me, that how much access to domain knowledge and expertise do members of parliament have within parliament. I think it is much more now than it used to be, and there are many fora which have been set up. But perhaps you would like to give some comments on this. Do members of parliament have sufficient expertise available?
Actually, as get less credit for the knowledge and wisdom we carry than due. But on a serious note, I think, Indian Parliament, you have to see the wealth of experience and experience and knowledge they have. These are people, some of them have been elected 6 times, 7 times. Each of them is representing 3 million people, approximately on an average. Many of them have excelled in other walks of life. So, lot of experience, yes, they may not know the intricacies of trade negotiation, or so they may not know exactly what AI is and what are the possibilities of AI. So, yes, those things can be acquired. But overally, as Sir rightly said, as Harivansh Sir said, that first and foremost, we are here to represent and to enhance the national interest. Nation first. That is non-negotiable. Now, technical expertise, we have the best of diplomatic corps in our country. Ambassador Raghavan and his colleagues, we have the finest diplomats in the country, Madam Nutan, Kapoor. So they are there to do the final negotiations and to carry forward the broader direction and guidance of the Parliament. So I think, yes, domain knowledge is necessary. I think I did mention that, there should be far greater interaction, engagement between the Parliament and MEA establishment or think tanks working in this area. But to expect that the MPs or the Parliament will have integrated domain knowledge, I think is a bit too much. As I said, our job is to ensure that our nation's interest is reflected through the foreign policy. The people that we represent, whether it's the state of Odisha where I come from, or the people of the constituency that have sent the MP to Delhi, their interests are protected.
राघवन साहब की अनुमति से मैं एक पॉइंट ऐड करना चाहूँगा। आज की तारीख में बहुत कम लोग उनको जानते हैं। मैं एक एनेक्डोट आपको बता रहा हूँ आपके क्वेश्चन के उत्तर में। हमारे देश में एक दादा धर्माधिकारी हुए, वो संविधान सभा में थे, बड़े फ्रीडम फाइटर थे, गांधी जी के बड़े क्लोज थे। कुछ लोगों ने आज़ादी मिलने के बाद दे ऑप्टेड फॉर सर्वोदय एंड अदर सोशल सर्विस इवेंट, मतलब वो उसमें चले गए। वो एक बात कहा करते थे, उन्होंने किताब लिखी सर्वोदय दर्शन की, बहुत महत्वपूर्ण। उसमें लिखा कि फिलॉसफर्स ने दुनिया में बहुत सारे दर्शन दिए समाज को कैसे बदला जाए। इकोनॉमिस्ट ने, मार्क्स वगैरह सब ने थियरी दिया समाज को इस रूप में हम आगे ले जाएं, पर समाज को बदला रूल करने वाले लोगों ने। पहले के ज़माने में वो चाहे राजा होते हो, आज वो पार्लियामेंट ही है, आप पसंद करें न करें। दूसरा फैक्ट है कि जो डोमेन एक्सपर्ट्स हैं, और आजकल की तारीख में अगर आप पूछें कि एआई के बारे में हम क्या जानते हैं, अब ये आई मस्ट एक्सेप्ट कि हम बहुत नहीं जानते। और जिस तरह से टेक्नोलॉजी लेड दुनिया आज की तारीख में हो गई है, पहले आइडियोलॉजी, हमारी मोटी समझ है कि आइडियोलॉजी पहले दुनिया को बदलती थी, नाउ टेक्नोलॉजी का बड़ा सीरियस इम्पैक्ट है चीज़ों को बदलने में। तो पार्लियामेंट में जब भी हम लीगल लॉ मेकिंग प्रोसेस में जाते हैं तो बहुत सारे ऐसे इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं, पार्लियामेंट खुद भी डेवलप कर रहा है कि इंट्रिकेट सब्जेक्ट्स पर कैसे हमें ब्रीफिंग दी जाए, डोमेन एक्सपर्ट्स कैसे आए हमको समझाएं। अंततः ले मैन की भाषा में सारी चीज़ों को पूरे देश के सामने रखने का काम इन्हीं पार्लियामेंट्रियंस का है। तब उसमें प्रो या फेवर क्या पब्लिक ओपिनियन बनती है, उस पर सरकार निर्णय ले सकती है। लेकिन डेफिनेटली चाहे वो WTO जैसे हों, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस जैसे, और ये बहुत सारी ऐसी चीज़ें जो इशूज आते हैं पार्लियामेंट में, अब तो मैं देखता हूँ कि पार्लियामेंट्रियंस के अंदर इर्रिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ पार्टी एक बड़ा समूह है जो इन चीज़ों को जानना चाहता है, सुनना चाहता है। तो आई थिंक कि ये प्रोसेस है इसका। हाँ प्लीज़।
Just a quick point, you mentioned about WTO negotiations. It's not that we did not negotiate. In fact, the negotiations were very steep, but there were two very specific aspects. Indian, probably Dr. Raghavan and others in Foreign Service will agree, Indian Foreign Service was not geared up at that point of time to deal with the trade negotiations, and that we depended on the Commerce Ministry to get into it. So it was not that it was not negotiated, only thing is they were very tricky. And I did mention the book because I got the benefit of one of the senior parliamentarians guiding me, that Dr. Manmohan Singh, as the finance minister, was very keen that India join the WTO. He said we should not miss the bus at this time, because we have missed the bus in economic reforms, we joined very late. That was his understanding. And he actually had arranged briefings regularly for parliamentarians by Commerce Ministry officials to understand the intricacies of each of those agreements that were being negotiated. So that was one act. So I disagree with that particular, probably you have arrived at a conclusion, that's your choice. Number two, that helped you when you went in for the nuclear deal. In fact, I did quote in the big former Foreign Secretary, Mr. Shyam Saran did mention that Prime Minister Manmohan Singh gave very clear red lines. He said, come what may, these lines you have to stop at this point of time. So it was our negotiation teams, as Dr. Raghavan and others would know, they know where they stand and to what extent they could go. So it's not that you learn from every experience, right? And on a final note, I would like to add, sir, having worked in the US Congress, let me tell you, they are not the brightest of everybody. I know that. But they have advantage of a very professional staff who come from different worlds, who actually do the work. And one of the things which I did as a staffer was we work for votes. We reach across to people. And I remember on the while we were discussing on South Asia, there was a hearing, and 3 international South Asian experts, including a professor who is no longer alive, Professor Stephen Cohen, he had come to, and I was just chatting up with him. So suddenly he says, because the nuclear deal was, up and down, there was a lot of opposition at home. He says, Prasad, what does this Mulayam Singh Yadav know about nuclear issues? Because he was opposing. So I said, Professor, can I say something? He says, yes. He says, when I started preparing for my role on the Hill, the first lesson we were told, United States of America has 435 secretaries of state, which means every secretary has a right on foreign policy. I said, he's a leader of a political party, which is supporting the government. So he said, I see your point. And I don't know, but it just changed the perspective for them. And in many cases, the Congress people say, oh, I don't know on this issue, I'll go with you. They do that. So it's not that, because they have a very professionally trained staff who help them out, and we work with them as a team. Many times the votes don't work for you, that's okay. So I don't know, probably the Indian Parliament at some point of time would also take benefit of professional staff it helps. The domain experts are briefing you, but beyond that, they help you to size up things differently. Thank you.
Yes.
हेलो, मैं सुनील डांग हूँ, जर्नलिस्ट हूँ। मेरे दिमाग में काफ़ी देर से मैं सोच रहा था, क्योंकि आपने एक क्वेश्चन ऐसा किया एआई का, तो इसीलिए मैं ये क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा हूँ कि आपने सिंदूर भी देखा और आपने कारगिल भी देखा. What you find now, what is the change in the war? And आपको क्या लगा कि पाकिस्तान में क्या हो रहा है और हिंदुस्तान किस तरह से चेंज हो रहा है? एज ए हाई कमिश्नर आप जब थे, विजडम अब आप कह रहे हैं आ गई है, तो थोड़ा हमें भी मिल जाए.
बदलाव तो बहुत है उस टाइम, कारगिल के टाइम में और आज के टाइम में, मतलब बहुत ज़मीन आसमान का फ़र्क है. And there are many details, one can go into them, but I think one common point is there, in Kargil and now, that as former Prime Minister Vajpayee said, you can't change your neighbors. और जो neighbors के अंदर जो मानसिकता है, आपके पास कोई ऐसी शक्ति नहीं है कि आप उस मानसिकता को बदल सकें. Some people think we can change Pakistan by trading with them, by holding out the hand of friendship. किसी तरह से वो बदल जाएंगे. Other people think that by using military force वो बदल जाएंगे. It's not in our power to change Pakistan. वो सिर्फ people of Pakistan can change Pakistan. We have to deal with Pakistan as it is, not as how we would like it to be. So that realism has remained the same, I think. That you have to keep your neighborhood very high in your priority, और उसको आप कभी उससे अपने आंखें हटा नहीं सकते. I think that part is the same. I think that we'll discuss later. But may I, again, before the vote of thanks is delivered, first of all, congratulate Mr. Prasad again for this wonderful book, and thank ICWA for this book and for the publications program. But most of all, thank Shri Harivansh Narayan Singh ji and Shri Sujeet Singh ji for spending so much time with us and giving us an opportunity to also interact with them in such detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Everybody here would agree that it was a very stimulating discussion. On behalf of the Council, I take this opportunity to express our gratitude to the Honorable Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, Shri Harivansh Narayan Singh ji, and Honorable Member of Parliament and Member Consultative Committee of Ministry of External Affairs, Shri Sujeet Kumar ji, for taking time out to take part in this discussion and give us their insightful comments. We also express our sincere thanks to Ambassador Raghavan for chairing the discussion. We take this opportunity to thank our audience and our guests for joining us today. I invite you all to join us for high tea at the foyer. Thank you so much.